All right, good morning and welcome to Counterpoints. I'm all alone in this spacious studio here in Washington, D.C. Emily is joining us from our London bureau. Emily, tell us what you're doing in London and how you doing?
That's right. Well, it's my second week at Unheard, so I'm hanging out here with the team in London, getting to know everyone. But it was a good week to be in Europe because of the fallout from the EU election. Sagar and Crystal have done a great job covering it, but it has been fascinating to sort of see a lot of it play out here in London. But we have domestically so much on the docket for today's show. And actually also, Ryan, the guest that you have us booked with today, it will be an incredible conversation, no doubt about it.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. We're going to talk to Shahbaz Gill, who used to serve as chief of staff to Imran Khan. He was famously over there in Pakistan. He was famously arrested there, tortured, was able to get out of detention, escape the country. He's here in the United States. He's going to update us on some of the transnational repression that's going on between the United States and Pakistan here. Obviously, we're going to talk about the Hunter Biden conviction yesterday. We also, on Monday, we had Lauren Windsor on the show, Democratic activist and journalist who did the undercover audio of Alito and Roberts. She also has audio of Alito's wife, which is kind of funny at minimum. I think everybody across the spectrum can agree that it's funny. So we'll talk about that. Israel and Hamas are both kind of dueling over who has accepted the ceasefire deal. They're both, each is saying that they've basically, that their opponents have rejected it, but their opponents are saying they've accepted it. It's completely confusing, but we're going to untangle all the latest of that on that question. Sean Fain is now facing threats basically from this independent monitor connected to the Department of Justice. We can unpack some of that. Emily, Fox News kind of stepped in it with this Jeffrey Epstein, Donald Trump question, didn't they?
Yeah, they really did. They edited part of an answer out and then uploaded the full answer. So either that's a defense of Fox or an argument against the sort of journalism behind this question. So we'll get to that because Donald Trump's relationship with Jeffrey Epstein's relationship to, well, everyone in the corridors of power remains extremely relevant. And on that note, our Friday show, we are going to be having a back and forth with Oren Cass of American Compass, who's recently been profiled as like the man turning the Republican Party populist, trying to turn the Republican Party populist. So Ryan and I think have some good points of contrast to bring out with Oren. So we're looking forward to a good conversation. Make sure to subscribe to Breaking Points Premium for an early version of that show on Thursday evening.
Yes, indeed. So let's talk about Hunter Biden. So Hunter Biden yesterday, in rapid fashion, so fast that reporters and Hunter's family were not even able to get into the courtroom in time to kind of see the verdict. That's how quickly the jury was able to come to the conclusion that he was guilty of 3 felony charges connected to basically illegal possession of a weapon, lying on his background check information, a crime. What did Matt Gaetz call it? Kind of stupid. Basically on the form, and I want to hear your reaction to this. On the form, it says, "Are you using drugs?" Mm-hmm. Grammatically, just a mess of a question. And I pointed this out at the time, and Hunter Biden actually did use the defense that I sort of jokingly provided, which was that he wasn't using drugs at the time. Because the form says, "Are you using drugs?" And so Hunter said, not only am I not using drugs at this very moment, what Hunter had said is that he was going in and out of bouts of sobriety and then relapse during this period. And so if you are an addict, if you're somebody that has serious problems, a lot of times you might say, look, I'm a week sober and I'm never going to drink again. I'm never going to do drugs again the rest of my life. And if somebody asked you at that moment, are you using? You would say no, honestly. Mm-hmm. That night you might use. So were you lying then? It's like a very philosophical question. The jury didn't take long to debate the question though, and found him just straight up guilty.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, I think what they read into this is a lack of sincerity. I mean, there's diary or there's entries in the laptop. There's parts of his own book that are in such close proximity to the day that he signed the form. That said, I mean, he had Abe Lowell. He had sort of brought out and again, this is in the state of Delaware, a very friendly state for the Bidens. So it's a friendly jury, and they had this addiction defense. So I was actually fairly surprised by how quickly they returned those results. One of the more interesting elements was flagged in Playbook this morning. They noted a source actually told them on the Dem side it would have been worse if he had been found not guilty for the 2024 campaign, simply because that would have fed into the broader narrative being pushed. And I think it's a correct narrative, and I think it still stands, that Hunter Biden is being unduly protected by the Department of Justice. And the reason that is still my big takeaway from this case is the gun charge is by far and away the safest charge that Hunter Biden could have been hit with. We've seen this defense. You mentioned Matt Gaetz. We've seen Thomas Massey talk about this, that, of all the things in the world to charge Hunter Biden with, he still, by this Department of Justice, has not been charged with a FARA violation, despite the fact that he did not register for his work with Burisma and other clients. That is a felony. The DOJ slow walked to the point where the statute of limitations expired on felony tax violations. He actually didn't pay taxes on income the year that he was taking money from Burisma and other foreign clients, a much more serious charge. And again, they slow walked. Their whistleblowers have talked about this, but the DOJ and under the Biden administration slow walked the investigation to the point where the statute of limitations on more serious charges expired, and he still hasn't been hit with a FARA violation. He could still be hit with a FARA violation, but from his own book, from the laptop, there is just blatantly obvious evidence. It is plain as day that they should charge him with a FARA violation. They charge Paul Manafort, and if they don't hit him with a FARA violation, that pretty much tells you what you need to know, but we already know that they slow walked, so the statute of limitations on the other tax charges expired. It's happening under his father's DOJ, so it does look bad, and I think, frankly, it is bad.
And the defense from his camp about why he shouldn't be charged as a foreign agent is kind of amusing, and it basically goes, he didn't actually do any work.
Yes.
He took money from these foreign entities. Like, he doesn't deny that, but then he just put that money right up his nose and didn't actually.
He was having fun.
Yeah, he used his name to get the money, but he did not use his name to then exert any influence in Washington. He just went to Skid Row and he went to Vegas and traveled the country and did what you can find out what he did if you want to search or read his memoir even. And very little of that involved like actual influence peddling. Now, it probably wouldn't be too hard for him to find some small thing that he did. And obviously, during this period of his life, he's not a big one for paperwork. The fact that he didn't file any taxes for many years in a row means that, like, if you're not filing your taxes, you're probably not filing any of your lobbying paperwork either, whether he's lobbying or not. It does seem like there's credible potential for some jail time, some prison time here. What's your guess? What's your sense of whether or not he'll actually go to some minimum security federal prison as a result of this?
It's a really good question. And when also, I mean, does it play out during the election? I think is a very interesting question as well. I'm guessing, I think you're right. I think you're right that he'll probably get some minimal amount of time in a minimal security prison. He might not, though. I think isn't this his first time felony actual conviction? He hasn't been convicted of anything before, so that's helpful, obviously.
Yeah, and I saw some statistics in Glenn Thrush's article in the New York Times. It's something like 8% of people charged with this same crime don't get any prison time, but 92% do. This is also an unusual case to charge in the sense that two things. One, the gun was not used in the commission of a crime. And two, the person is now sober. So in most cases, like federal prosecutors who would come across this kind of thing would say, given these other circumstances, we're not going to go with this. However, this is, and in fact, they basically got to a deal where he wasn't going to serve any prison time, if you remember months ago, but then it blew up in front of the judge. The judge was questioning different versions of it. Hunter's team wanted future administrations not to be able to have any, say over kind of the implementation of his sentence. And, the whole thing blew up in the courtroom. And so she threw out the plea deal. And that's why it ended up going to trial rather than getting pled out, like I think most of these would otherwise. It does. Your answer brought to mind Trump as well when you were saying like this is the cheapest, silliest, like lamest thing that you could convict the person for, when there are all these other more substantial things that are either coming down the pike or could be thrown at him. And it reminded me of Trump and the prosecution in New York, where it's like, okay, yeah, clearly guilty of that, and like Hunter is clearly guilty. He did the thing. He filled out the form. He had the gun. He was, using drugs. We know that because he talks about it and he brags about it on his, on that laptop. But I think you're right. It's like compared to the more systemic things, it is small. And I wonder if there's just something about our system that just has such a hard time going after itself. Like it's fine nibbling around the edges, but like going right for the heart of it is just much more difficult. Do you think we've seen the last of this? The prosecutors are saying they still have some tax charges that they could launch, even if they're not, even if some of them have expired. Do you expect we're going to see more of this?
Well, he is facing charges in California. He's likely to appeal this decision. So it's tax charges in California, and he's probably going to appeal the decision that was just made. So I think it's going to continue to play out. And one of the key differences, to your point, it is an interesting point. One of the key differences, I think, with Trump is that we've seen everything thrown at the wall with Trump, which we've talked about. I mean, when you have the documents case, when you have the January 6 charges, and you're talking about the hush money to the porn star, it's like, they really were doing the throw everything at the wall and see what sticks strategy. Whereas with Hunter Biden, this is so far the thing that Weiss has charged him with. And, he even tried to do a plea deal that the judge was like, whoa, hold on, last summer. The judge was like, are you the prosecutor? What kind of prosecutor would do? It was such a sweetheart deal that the judge, in this very unusual moment, had to be like, wait a second, what's going on here? Because what Weiss had attempted to prosecute just didn't make sense from the perspective of like the government prosecuting a case. So I would say that to me seems to be a significant difference between Trump and Hunter. That said, we talked in our debate segment last week with Will Chamberlain that, as he said, Republicans are planning to do the throw everything at the wall and see what sticks strategy if Donald Trump is elected. I think he had something where he was like, watch out, because it's coming right back in that direction if Donald Trump wins.
Yeah. We can put up a two here. President Joe Biden has said that he has no plans to pardon Hunter Biden. He said, I'm the president, but I'm also a father. He's proud of his son. He wants to be there for him. I wonder how true that is if Biden does lose re-election in November. I think most of the country would expect him on the way out to pardon his son. I think the entire country would forgive him at that point for doing so, just on a human level. Like, I think most people would almost think it was kind of cruel and callous if a parent had the opportunity on their way out to pardon their son and didn't take it. It'd be almost weird.
Is it like Bill Clinton and his brother? Am I remembering that was a Bill Clinton's brother? Yeah, that was Roger Clinton, which is a fascinating story. Like, Bill Clinton was informed when he was governor of Arkansas that his brother was under investigation for selling small amounts of crack in order to feed his habit. And basically the head of the police in Arkansas said, what do you want me to do about this, boss? And according to Clinton, and this hasn't been challenged by anybody, he said, just treat it how you would, anybody else. And he ended up going to prison. Roger Clinton did. I assume I don't know the exact story of what he ended up doing toward the end, but he did serve some time. So yeah, we'll see. And so Hunter's best bet at this point for avoiding jail time would be his dad losing, perhaps, in November. Well, and yeah, that was the interesting thing I read into the playbook quote from that source today, is that actually I think the Biden campaign has realized that if they can make Trump look overzealous in going after an addict who's been treated fairly by the justice system. Actually, that if there's this appearance of fairness, that he was prosecuted, did the time, and Trump continues to attack this addict, then the Biden campaign sees sort of an upside in it. And it does. I just looked this up while we were talking. Roger Clinton was pardoned for that 1985 cocaine possession, and it was drug trafficking before Clinton left office. It's also worth noting that the country basically forgave Ford for pardoning Nixon, even though it was really controversial at the time, like very controversial at the time. I think Biden would be safe with a pardon for Hunter.
Hey, if you liked that video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to Breaking Points.
If you want to see the rest of Counterpoints, go to breakingpoints.com to become a premium member and get the full uncut show every morning in your inbox and on Spotify.